Hi, this is Lourdes Smith, and this is my response to the synchronous meeting that I missed on Monday the 30th. I was at a conference, and I do apologize for not being able to hang out with you guys, but I wanted to give a response on some of the questions that were asked for us that were unable to make it. So I jotted down on a little PowerPoint on the two questions that were asked for us to respond to. The first one was on describing a key idea from the readings that was meaningful to me. And I think out of all the readings, each one brought a really important and a different perspective. But I found, and I'm not going to butcher his name, but Mike thoughts on happiness and the relationship to flow to be incredibly important to me personally. And also David Gauntlet's thoughts on media and school and the experiences that we should focus on with regard to creativity and our students or and our teachers. For Mike, for me, when asked where in your ordinary life do you experience happiness, I think about the times I've been able to write on my own, and I do think every one of us and all of us have a story to share and a story to tell. But for me, when I think about those aspects of flow, of being able to reflect on, to sit back and relax, but still be challenged, to work on something that was meaningful but not forced, to work on something where you forget to eat and forget to sleep and forget everything because the process and the flow of that process was so incredibly, it took you out of your element. I have to think about writing. Not academic writing, which is a little different, but back when I was doing more creative writing. I think that was a big, big difference. And I'm curious to kind of try to transfer that a little bit maybe to my academic writing and to kind of try to experience some of that joy and happiness. I don't know. I don't know if it can be transferred. But when I think about his thoughts on attention and focus regarding flow, I think about how sometimes I do waver when it comes to my academic and research writing. It's important to me, and it's on the list, but sometimes I have to admit I don't see the creative process that's there. But maybe it is. And I've thought a lot about this over the weekend. I think this is why his work spoke to me the most. I think about what it would take to look at it differently, because I think it's my perspective and not necessarily the perspective of, maybe the reality, but it's my perspective on how I view the creative process with regard to flow and academic writing and research. Perhaps I should change my idea of research being uncreative and look at ways to be creative within the research. I think there's room. I don't know if it's going to be necessarily in the writing part. Maybe it's more in the design part of the research or the research question that I ask. Those are definitely things that are important and meaningful to me. When I think about the characteristics of flow, I know that having a purpose, having a challenge, thinking about what you want to do with what you're working on. I think about people that can go and are so, my husband's like that a little bit. He goes with the flow, I guess you could say. He's an engineer, and once he gets into something, and he can work on it for just hours and hours and hours on end without, any kind of worries or any kind of concerns about food or, if there's something else he needs to do or anything like that. It's actually quite remarkable to me because I used to have that in some capacities, but I have to admit it's kind of faded. And I don't know if that's because maybe my own creativity is kind of failing, or I haven't had the opportunity to kind of focus on that. And that's something that I definitely want to think about in my, as a person, as, where I want to go. I also feel another big part of the flow characteristics are kind of in the land of distractions. And I think in our life, and we have a lot of distractions and digital distractions on top of that. We have a lot of things that we feel we need to do, and we don't make the time to even start on that creative process. I think sometimes if we have goals that are kind of out there, but we don't put in the process that you need to formulate how to get to those goals and how to meet those goals. Um, I think it's important to recognize, ways that we can support our own selves with reaching a status of flow. And I think about, what it would feel like to become so immersed in something again. And I want to get back to that. That's something that's kind of important to me. Um, I think the other thing with flow that was surprising was on immediate feedback. I think I read or heard some other information about the need for follow up and immediate feedback, which I think is sometimes difficult in some capacities. Now, I have to say with the with the invention of the internet, and we have so many ways to communicate with each other, there's definitely a way to get immediate feedback. But then I wonder about, are we brave enough to do that? I don't know if I am in my age bracket, but or I know that there are a lot of kids out there, and they will put on everything on. YouTube is just basically a online version of a talent show with all the wonderful things and some not so wonderful things they put on there. But I think about that with regard to the flow and the aspect of flow and that need or that desire for feedback on what you're doing. Um, that was kind of interesting to me. So, Mike, and I'm not going to mispronounce his name, um, was really, I feel like he did a really good job. And I feel like he touched on something not only for this class, but also in my life. Secondly, how are school media examples of sit back and be told experiences? Well, I think that they are, and I think that they have been over time. I think back to my own education in the 80s, and we were, it was very much the stage on the stage. Teacher told, teacher talked, teacher lectured, and you took notes, or you may have been lucky to have a lab, and maybe you got to do a little something, but making and creating was very minimal in terms of personal. And media was, we had a media center, which that's what they call our little school library, but I don't know if we were even given the opportunity to learn and view as much. I mean, I was probably in there more than anybody because I loved, the different books and the different materials that I didn't have access to at home. At home, the only media we majorly had was TV. I mean, that was our type of media, radio a little bit. But things have changed so much, and even if that is so, I still feel that we are in a sit back and be told experience for a lot of teachers. The transition from getting the students motivated and accountable and active and interactive in their own learning is still, it's there, and I feel it's coming on stronger. But I think teachers in service and pre-service need more experiences on how to do it. And speaking of the second, should creativity be focused on process or product? I think it's a little bit of both. But I have to say, I think teachers and pre-service teachers also, which I work with, really need more of a focus on the processes that underlie creativity and ways to expand it. That doesn't discount the product, because that's something that we're all kind of looking for, the end result. We do look at that. But understanding the process of how to get there for teachers and students of all ages is incredibly important, and something I don't think we give enough time to. We live in a world, we live in schools, we live in districts, counties, and states that focus on a standardized way of doing things. And I'm not just talking about standardized tests or, state standards or just any of that, but we come from a very standardized way of looking at things. We honor creativity in a way, unless sometimes for some people, if it messes up our understanding and perceptions about what we're trying to get through to them. Creativity comes in a lot of different shapes and sizes now. It's not just a one size fits all. It never really was. But I think even more now, we have many outlets for creative people and ways to get there. And at the same time, we have a very, this is a standardized way of doing things. And that kind of goes into the next question, and how is creativity political? And I think about the individual. The individual, it's no longer just groups. Individuality is creative, or can be creative in nature. And it's necessary for teachers and students and all of us to honor creativity both the process and the product, and think about how it can, help our understanding of politics in nature, on consumer, ways of thinking, on, how we view each other, how we view our own ideas, how we view the media itself. The more we put out there and allow for people to be creative in their, not only their understanding and showing us their understanding, but catching our attention and being creative in both the product and process, we allow the individual to deem what's important to them in our society. And I think that's a direction that we should go into. Media for a long time was very top down, but in reality, media now is many grassroots product, many people are making their own media, making their own message politically, as a consumer, as an individual. So I definitely think those are important. The second part was, what questions do you have about creativity that could be answered through research? And I think for me, I think about what I can do to help my pre-service teachers. I work with teacher educators that are going to be going into the classroom. Oopsie, my television just popped.